keep an eye on that. So I was struck actually over the weekend and actually over the last few weeks by whether my pitch is now disastrously inappropriate and out of date or is fantastically, prophetically well timed. Because it's about nostalgia and it's about politics and it's about war. And I was struck, the news coverage is centered, for example, on Darkest Hour, these kind of themes, and about what that might tell us about politics. And I think what's striking about it is that what the news coverage isn't picking up on, which is I think where my program actually fits in. Throughout time, we've always made nostalgic programs in and around times of war, through the Second World War, through the Vietnam War, and particularly through 9/11. And I want to emphasise that in the 9/11 moment in particular, there were a proliferation of video games in particular, where you fought biofied sort of enemies. Bush's axis of evil, these kinds of people were the typical enemies. Often communist China, Russia, or indeed people from the Middle East. And I think it's quite striking that what normally happens in times of conflict, particularly when they become intractable, is that we end up with a different kind of moment in the popular consciousness. And it centres around things like the Vietnam War and Apocalypse Now. And what happens is, traditionally speaking, is societies become introspective, they become concerned about that conflict, and they actually make programs which expose the fracturing of the national psyche. And often that coincides with protesting on a wide scale, but also a sort of a return to an introspective form of foreign policy, and typically centred in America, with the end of American exceptionist foreign policy. And the kind of main protagonists in these popular cultures are often themselves suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder or other kinds of fragmentation and fracturing. And what's really striking about this period, if we consider that the wars that we're involved in have gone on now for longer than any other conflicts that we've had in history. In Afghanistan, in Iraq, we basically, in some senses, the West has been accused of being responsible for the development of the largest narco state in the history of the world, in Afghanistan. That's one of our legacies. But yet our popular culture is extraordinarily nostalgic. Call of Duty, for example, the new Call of Duty World War II, it's the largest entertainment franchise in the world, and we're now going back to fighting wars in the past. Darkest Hour, the Churchill film that I mentioned, which is slightly more complex, Dunkirk, etc. We have a proliferation of these kinds of narratives. And there's something quite striking about what it tells us, I think, both about ourselves and actually about our future. Part of this obviously may be linked to Brexit and the Trump phenomenon, but part of it is also linked, I think, to a failure for us to acknowledge our issues to do with our own legacy of conflict. Thank you.